There is a road in Darkest Dungeon that every player remembers, even if they do not think about it often. It is not the final hallway, it is not the room where the last boss waits, it is not even the first dungeon where your heroes still believe that a torch and a sharpened blade are enough to keep the dark away. It is the road at the very beginning, the one leading back to your family estate, the one your carriage takes after a letter arrives from a man who should have died quietly with his shame. At first, it feels simple: a ruined mansion, a cursed bloodline, a village swallowed by monsters. You are the heir, and your duty is obvious. Reclaim what was lost, restore the hamlet, send brave souls into the depths. Bring back gold, relics, heirlooms, and answers. But Darkest Dungeon does not begin with a hero answering a call. It begins with a confession. And the more you listen to that confession, the more you realize something deeply uncomfortable. The Ancestor is not warning you about the darkness beneath the manor because he wants you to escape it. He is inviting you back into it. The first lie Darkest Dungeon tells you is that this is a game about survival. You recruit heroes, you prepare supplies, you enter corrupted places, and you try to come back alive. On the surface, everything has the shape of a grim adventure. The Crusader raises his sword. The Vestal whispers a prayer. The Highwayman reloads his pistol. Plague Doctor tightens her mask and steps into the rot. Every class looks like an answer to a problem. Every skill looks like a small act of control. Bleed the monster. Stun the cultist. Heal the wounded. Reduce stress, extinguish the threat before it breaks the party. Yet the genius of Darkest Dungeon is that it slowly teaches you a horrifying truth. The dungeon is not just attacking the body, it is attacking the idea that human beings can remain themselves after seeing what they were never meant to see. At first, stress feels like another resource. Something that rises when the torch gets low. When some twisted thing in the dark whispers from a mouth that should not exist. But eventually, stress becomes the real story. Hit points tell you whether a hero is alive. Stress tells you whether that hero can still understand why staying alive matters. And that is where Darkest Dungeon becomes more than a monster game. It becomes a story about the cost of knowledge, the cost of inheritance, the cost of looking too long into a truth that does not care whether the human mind survives the revelation. The hamlet is supposed to be your safe place. That is what games usually give you. But in Darkest Dungeon, even safety feels infected. The tavern is not joyful. It is desperation wearing the mask of celebration. The stagecoach does not bring saviors. It brings replacements. And this is one of the darkest ideas in the entire game. Your heroes are not chosen ones. They are not destined legends. They are bodies passing through a machine built by someone else's sin. Death Machine was built by the Ancestor. Before the monsters, before the ruins, before the hamlet became a place where people muttered prayers under their breath, there was a man with wealth, power, and boredom. The Ancestor had everything a person could want, and that was precisely the problem. He was not driven to evil by hunger. He was not forced into cruelty by survival. He was not a desperate man, clawing for one more day of life. He was a wealthy noble surrounded by comfort, and comfort made the world feel small. So he searched for something larger. Not wisdom exactly, not truth in the noble sense. He searched for forbidden knowledge because ordinary life could no longer impress him. That is the first tragedy of Darkest Dungeon. The horror did not enter the world because someone suffered too much. It entered because someone had too much and still wanted more. The estate became a laboratory for obsession. Every region around it tells a different chapter of the Ancestors' crimes. The ruins are not just old stones filled with undead. They are the remains of faith corrupted by ambition. Sacred spaces became feeding grounds for blasphemous rites. The warrens are not just tunnels full of swine things. They are the result of experiments that treated life as clay, flesh as material, suffering as a necessary byproduct. The Weald is not just a forest. It is nature answering violation with infection, rot, spores, and things that grow wrong because something beneath the soil has been disturbed. Cove is not just a coastal dungeon. It is the echo of a bargain with drowned powers and inhuman civilizations older than the hamlet itself. Every expedition is framed like exploration, but what you are really doing is touring the consequences of one man's curiosity. And here is where the story becomes cruel. The Ancestor already knows what happened. He knows because he caused it. His narration follows you everywhere, and at first it feels like guidance. His voice is rich, commanding, almost comforting in its certainty. He names the monsters. He remembers the places. He gives shape to the nightmare. But listen closely and the voice becomes something else.
Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
It is not the voice of a mentor. It is the voice of a guilty man who has rehearsed his guilt so many times that it now sounds like poetry. He does not simply explain. He performs. He turns atrocities into dramatic phrases. He turns victims into footnotes. He turns his own descent into legend. That is why he is so frightening. The ancestor does not deny what he did. He aestheticizes it. He tells you of his sins with the rhythm of a man who wants to be remembered. This is the dark brilliance of Darkest Dungeon's narration. The ancestor is both confession and temptation. He condemns the horrors, but he also makes them fascinating. He warns you about pride, but every sentence is soaked in pride. He speaks of ruin, but he cannot stop admiring the shape of it. Through him, the game asks a quiet and terrible question. When we tell stories about evil beautifully, do we defeat it, or do we preserve its power? The heroes you send into the dungeon are caught inside that question. They arrive broken, flawed, hungry, faithful, arrogant, desperate, or damned. Some come for coin, some for redemption, some because violence is the only language they still understand, and you, as the player, become the manager of their collapse. You celebrate when they become stronger, but the game never lets you forget that strength is not purity. A hero can survive 10 expeditions and come back less human than when they began. They can stand at death's door and keep fighting, not because they are brave, but because fear has burned every other instinct out of them. In most games, light is comfort. In Darkest Dungeon, light is negotiation. High torchlight gives accuracy, safety, and the illusion of order. Low torchlight brings danger, fear, and greater rewards. This one mechanic tells the whole story. The player is constantly tempted to dim the light for treasure, to accept more risk, to push further into the unknown because greed makes the darkness profitable. And suddenly, without realizing it, you're behaving like the ancestor. You are not performing rituals in a manor basement, but the shape of the sin is familiar. You know the cost. You know your heroes are breaking. You know the darkness is stronger when the torch fades. But there may be more gold in the next room. There may be an heirloom. There may be progress. So you continue. That is the secret horror of Darkest Dungeon. It does not simply tell you the ancestor was monstrous. It asks how long it takes before you start making decisions that sound like his. You send a wounded party deeper because the objective is almost complete. You keep a stressed hero in the roster because hiring someone new would slow your plan. You dismiss the broken and recruit the fresh. You look at quirks, stats, diseases, resistances. You stop seeing people and start seeing utility. The ancestor treated human life as a tool for revelation. You treat it as a tool for progression. The difference is scale, not structure, and the game knows this. The further you descend, the less Darkest Dungeon feels like a campaign against evil, and the more it feels like a ritual you are completing on someone else's behalf. Every boss is not just a monster, but a memory. Boss after boss, region after region, the world reveals itself as a place where boundaries have failed, dead and living, sacred and profane, mind and body, science and madness. Everything leaks into everything else, and beneath it all, Darkest Dungeon itself awaits. This is where the game's title stops being symbolic and becomes geographical. The Darkest Dungeon is not merely the most dangerous place. It is the wound under the estate, the origin point, the hidden truth beneath the family line. For most of the game, you think you are cleaning up the mess left by the ancestor's arrogance, but the final descent reveals something far worse. The ancestor did not merely uncover a monster, he uncovered a cosmic truth. Beneath the world there is a heart, not metaphorical, a living, pulsing, eldritch center of creation and destruction. So ancient that human history is mold on stone. So vast that morality cannot touch it. The Heart of Darkness is terrifying because it reframes the entire game. The undead, the swine, the cultists, the fishmen, the fungal horrors, they are not random corruptions. They are symptoms. The world itself has a sickness, or perhaps the sickness is the truth of the world finally becoming visible. The ancestor's great sin was not that he invented evil. It was that he dug deep enough to find the thing that had always been there. The hidden engine, the original wound, the truth beneath the floorboards of existence. And once he found it, he could not look away. This is the Lovecraftian heart of Darkest Dungeon. But the game uses cosmic horror in a particularly personal way. Cosmic horror often says that humanity is insignificant. Darkest Dungeon says something more intimate and more painful. Humanity may be insignificant, but human cruelty still matters. The universe may be monstrous, but the ancestors still chose to sacrifice people. The heart may be ancient, but the experiments in the warrens still required hands. The rituals in the ruins still required decisions. The bargains in the cove still required desire. The game does not let cosmic scale erase personal guilt. That is why the ancestor remains so compelling. He is both tiny before the cosmic horror and enormous in the damage he caused. By the time you reach the end, the ancestor is no longer only a dead narrator haunting your journey. He becomes part of the final nightmare. His voice, his ambition, his identity, all tangled with the thing beneath the estate. And this reveals the last punishment for his pride. He wanted forbidden knowledge. He wanted to touch something eternal. In a sense, he succeeded. But Darkest Dungeon understands that becoming part of eternity is not salvation. It is digestion. The ancestor did not master the darkness. He was absorbed by it. His voice survived, but survival is not freedom. His legacy endured, but legacy is not meaning. He became another mouth for the thing he thought he had discovered. Then the final battle asks for a sacrifice. This moment is one of the cruelest in the game because it strips away the comforting fantasy that preparation can save everyone. You can bring powerful heroes, you can upgrade their gear, you can know the mechanics, you can plan. But the heart demands a life. The game forces you to choose someone to die, and in doing so, it reveals what the entire campaign has been preparing you to become. After dozens of hours of managing heroes as resources, the final boss makes the logic explicit. Choose. Who is expendable? Who has served their purpose? Who gets erased so the mission can continue? And the horror is not only that the game asks this. The horror is that by then, you may already know the answer. Maybe you choose the weakest. Maybe the most stressed. Maybe the one whose skills are least useful now. Maybe you choose a hero you once cared about but who no longer fits the strategy. And as they vanish into the heart, the game quietly closes the distance between you and the ancestor. He sacrificed others for knowledge and power. You sacrifice someone to end what he began. The motive has changed. The act remains. That is why Darkest Dungeon's ending feels so bleak, because victory does not purify the road behind you. The hamlet may be restored, the monsters may be beaten back, the heart may be struck down, at least for now. But the game's final implications suggest that the cycle is not so easily broken. Evil in Darkest Dungeon is not a dragon slain at the end of a heroic tale. It is inheritance. It is repetition. It is a pattern of ambition, denial, sacrifice, and return. The ancestor writes to the heir. The heir returns to the estate. The heir sends others into the dark. The dark consumes them. And somewhere, sometime, the road begins again. This is why the game's opening and ending mirror each other so powerfully. The carriage, the letter, the estate, the voice. Darkest Dungeon is not shaped like a straight line. It is shaped like a spiral. Each expedition feels like progress, but the deeper structure suggests recurrence. The same mistakes wearing new faces. The same hunger calling itself duty. The same darkness waiting under the same stone. And perhaps that is the true meaning of the title. The Darkest Dungeon is not simply the place beneath the manor. It is the part of the human soul that can turn suffering into calculation. The part that can hear a confession and mistake it for wisdom. The part that can inherit a curse and call the continuation of that curse responsibility. The part that believes again and again that one more sacrifice will make the next one unnecessary. Darkest Dungeon is frightening because its monsters are grotesque, yes. Because its art style makes every hallway feel carved out of despair. Because its narrator sounds like a ghost speaking from inside your own skull. But the deepest fear is not the fear of dying in a corridor. It is the fear that the dungeon is teaching you how to think like it. You begin by fearing the darkness. Then you learn to use it. Then you profit from it. Then you feed it. And by the time the final torch flickers, you may understand the ancestor more than you want to. Not forgive him, but understand the shape of the descent. A little curiosity. A little greed. A little necessity. A little sacrifice. One decision that can be justified, then another, until the road behind you is paved with names you no longer have time to mourn. That is the dark story of Darkest Dungeon. Not simply that one man found a monster beneath his house. Not simply that a village was ruined. The real story is that darkness rarely arrives as darkness. It arrives as opportunity, as knowledge, as duty, as the promise that someone else's suffering will purchase a better ending. But in Darkest Dungeon, the ending is never clean. The graveyard fills, the hamlet waits, and beneath everything, deeper than stone, deeper than blood, something ancient continues to beat. Not loudly, not quickly, just patiently, like a heart that knows you will come back.